Hi, I'm Keegan Sands, and welcome back to Ship It, the podcast from DEPT Agency that's made by engineers for engineers. At DEPT, we're all builders, tackling projects from the interconnected realms of engineering and design. So much of what we build as engineers is often informed by the work of designers. On this podcast, we often focus on engineering, but today, for the first time, we get to dive into the design side of the coin. In this episode of our Origin Stories series, Matt Merrill from DEPT Digital Products talks to DEPT Senior Product Designer Breon Waters about how he got started and the various types of projects he has worked on. So without further ado, let's get started.
All right. Hey, I'm Matt Merrill from DEPT. I'm here with Breon Waters from DEPT as well. He's a designer with us, and we're going to do an origin story today. This is where we kind of take a deep dive into one person's story and how they came up in the world. And I think we've done a lot of engineering focused topics in the past, and I'm happy to bring on a designer here today. So this is going to be great. So Breon, why don't you introduce yourself? Designer's a pretty broad title. So what do you do? Who are you? Tell us about yourself, and tell us what you do here at DEPT.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I guess that's one of life's eternal questions, right? So I'm Breon Waters from LA. I'm a senior product designer. I've been with DEPT for over a year now. I actually started April of 2021, so it's actually flown by a lot. And what I do here at DEPT, it really varies, but I think at its heart is really companies come to us with either ideas for software, kind of business problems, and they look to us to actually make these real. So actually building them, but actually making things that people want to use and actually helps them. So I guess in a way it's cliche, but we're problem solvers, but also builders of things.
Nice. Yeah, that's one of the things I love most about being here. Everybody's a builder. Right. I love it. Cool. So what do you love in particular about what you do? And I don't just mean at DEPT. I just mean about being a designer.
Yeah, I think overall in design, and this is not anything that's like overly unique at all, but really just love learning new stuff. Like I love about design, it's like, so for example, like my first project at DEPT was for Novartis. It was right around the time they're building the vaccine. So like learning right at hand, like the actual process that happens to making a drug. Then after that, worked with Moody's on like commercial real estate. So it's like completely different worlds where it's like, of course, the first part is like you feel like an idiot, just like you're not understanding anything that's going on, but like slowly but surely you understand like little tidbits of information and just really kind of like things you've seen before, you never really gave it much thought. Now it's like you have at least like a basic understanding of it, which is cool.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I haven't done consulting before working at DEPT, and I've been here for about 4 years, and that's actually one of the things I really love the most too, is like just bringing a brand new perspective to things. And I like to think that, like, you know, you called it a dumb question. I know you were joking, but like I actually think that that's an advantage. So I totally get what you're saying. So that's cool. So how long have you been a designer?
Yeah, it's nuts. So official will be 11 years this summer. But like I've been a designer for that 11 years, but when I graduated from Art Center, there weren't UI UX classes. So like from my world, product designers are people designing like shoes or laptops, like actual physical things. Like those are actual product designers. So we were trained more in branding, but just essentially just like design being a tool, and just like once you know the strategy, who you're talking to, like basically the who, what, when, or why, you can design whatever the hell you want to do after that. So like that was like my entry into design, and like I actually still have that mindset too of just like approaching design from like really a storytelling aspect, and just how can you connect to like different mediums if you are using different mediums for whatever you're working on.
That's cool. Yeah. So the next question I was going to ask is like, how did you get into this? And you touched on that a little bit. So, what was the school you mentioned?
Art Center College of Design there in Pasadena.
Okay. And now what type of school is that? Is it like a visual design? Like, tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's like pretty world renowned. Like, it's like RISD,
cool.
Arts, hopefully not going to piss off other design schools I mentioned, but on par of that is Art Center, where back in the 50s, 60s, I think. And like, there's also Wikipedia to fact check me, right? But like, it started off like World War II vets like having like a professional trade school for it. But really just like have many disciplines. Like it's really, really known for transportation design, like Chip Foose was from there. There's graphic design, there's product design, there's entertainment design, like amazing designers, like illustrators for like, you'll see for like basically any like Disney Pixar film you have. I would bet my money that like they have some illustrators from Art Center there. There's photography, like basically all the visual arts there's some representation there within Art Center.
Wow, that's cool. And so what did you specialize in?
Yeah, so graphic design, but I was kind of a weird ball where like my work was kind of more like advertising based. Like it was more just like all about like stories and just like having really different stuff for it.
Huh. That's a really interesting take, and I can see why you bring narrative into like product design of software. That's really cool. So tell me a little bit more about your story. So you went to school for visual design, and then like where did that take you? What was your first job?
Yeah, it took me to a lot of different places I didn't really imagine going towards. So my first real job was so at Art Center they have portfolio, and there's kind of like a speed dating of sorts where basically they have like different companies come in and like you get 30 minutes to interview with them. And one I did was a smaller advertising shop called Saputo Design. And they hit me up to work with them on a freelance project for K-Swiss because I had one of them, like, I really love this project. As one of my final portfolio classes was for redesigning like an imaginary, basically like museum. So I did 1920s, and part of that, you have like Prohibition and flappers. I did these really fun like Dada-esque collages for like a fake like newspaper book about like 1920s New York, and they specifically came for me for that kind of like collage aesthetic.
Oh, cool.
So it's cool, just like it's just like doing that for shits and gigs and classes. Like now I'm kind of getting a little bit of money for it.
That's amazing. Yeah. Oh man. That's like the dream, yeah, right? So you get paid for what you want to do.
Definitely.
That's awesome. So that was your first gig, and what ultimately led you, like, what was your journey into software?
Sure. Yeah, a lot of it just like I was at that job for like the contract for the actual project was like a couple months, and so like after that I was just like trying to really do the type of work that I wanted to do, where it's like I had good learning experiences at places, but just like, in school, wherever you're doing, it's like it taught you like the world's your oyster and like do whatever you want to do, but you realize it's not quite that way. But initially got to a point where it's like I want to go to the Bay Area. There's some like awesome design places, or just like Starbucks there. Like you go every block, there's like, you name it, in-house place, agency, all kind of across the board. So moved there and was working on towards it, and just like happened to learn about, UX design. So it's like, oh, okay, and I never heard about that. And it's like, but that sounds interesting. So it's kind of, and then like later on, a couple of years fast forward, it's like heard about product design. So it's like all these things, it's like you've heard about parts of it before, but didn't really know that there was like a full term for it. So it's like a process of like on the job showing that like I can actually do these type of things, and kind of like really learning on the go, if you will. Yeah.
And I mean, I'm probably dating myself here, but like, I mean, I know like when I was coming up around like, the early 2000s and stuff like that, like I think I viewed like the type of software that I use as kind of like fun. Right. And I never thought it was like a job. And then, in the 2010s, it's like, oh no, this is actually serious stuff. And like, we need people to make it. We need people to think about the way it is to use and stuff like that. So I get that. That's cool. So I probably should have started with this, but like, was there something? So you started with visual design. Like, was there something in your childhood that steered you toward that? I'm really curious on like the real origins of like where did this like fire get started in you?
The real one's definitely different. Like little Breon thought he'd be playing first base for the Angels, crushing bombs, but that didn't quite happen. And also like my dad used to take me, he was in the Air Force, he used to take me to air shows. So like as a kid, I'd always like would love like airplanes, you know, like remember like knowing like SR-71 like spy plane versus like C-130 and like Hercules, just like knowing the different types of planes and like drawing them all over the place. But I didn't really know about design until I was at Cal Poly, and I was still thinking I could play baseball and study aerospace engineering, and just like couldn't hit a curveball for my life. So that kind of like hurt me in baseball, and just like I forget equations and whatnot. Like I'm bad in math, so like that kind of like I saved your life, Matt, by not being an aerospace engineer designing airplanes. So you're welcome.
Thanks.
So, yeah. And so just like I did, like I'm showing my age too. There's like these like career placement tests you could do, and just like I did it with my counselor, and just like one of the results was graphic designer. So it's like, okay, you know, like, oh, this is cool. You know, like, I've actually always liked to draw and whatnot, and there's an actual profession for it. And so I still wanted to play baseball. So my crazy behind sent out massive emails to schools that had baseball but also had a graphic design team.
That's awesome.
And so, like, yeah, I got feedback from a school.
You got the hustle early.
Yeah. Definitely. Just like a school, Minot State University in Minot, North Dakota, and Morningside College in Sioux City, Iowa got back to me. So, like, I love my mom to death, and this shows her just how, like, supportive and just, like, she's my hero, where she didn't judge me by, like, her son thinking, like, oh, you're from California, let's potentially go to the Midwest and play baseball, even though California is, like, the prime spot for baseball. So, hopped on a plane, rented a car. I tried out with North Dakota first. Then we drove all the way to Iowa for it. So, just, like, super nuts, but just really just got a feel of like the teams there. So long story short, I ended up going to Minot State to do my 4-year undergrad for it, and that's when I actually first started doing design classes there. So
cool. Nice. So it sounds like your family was pretty supportive.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That's awesome.
Like my mom, just like most moms, are really just kind of like want to see you happy, and my dad was definitely bummed, and we bumped heads about moving from. You know, it's like looking back, I can see his point of view where aerospace engineering, it's like you think like you're pretty like it's a profession, you make a lot of money. It's not as like risky as like designer, like, you know, it's like the adage of like a broken artist or starving artist, like that visual for parents, I imagine scares the crap out of them. So I can understand that now, but just like I knew like just seeing what I would do in my, not to sound like a hippie, like where my heart really enjoyed doing that stuff was in creating, and just like looking back now, it's like it really was like I believe I was meant to do what I'm doing now.
That's awesome. Nice. So you're still enjoying it?
Yeah.
Then. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, it's so funny because like just to relate to that a little bit, like I actually. I should have been the starving artist, but I went the other direction and I ended up in software too. But like I was really into music, right? And like I thought I wanted to do music production and something. It just myself. It wasn't my parents. Like it steered me to the more practical thing. And so isn't that funny? Like I did the opposite thing. But the reason I'm rambling on about this is like I think that one of the coolest things about my job, and I'm in engineering, and you know your job, is like the art of it, right? There is no right answer. Like I'm an engineer that believes more in the art of it than anything else. So, all right, awesome. Stop and sounding philosophical. But so, what was one of the biggest challenges that you've hit in your career coming up?
That's a good question. Well, part of that too, like when I moved in the Bay, you know, initially, so a good friend of mine, Josh Halstead, he's a designer in the Bay Area, really talented designer. Our crazy asses moved up there without an actual job. So, like, I thought for sure I'd work at, like, AKQA or Frog Design just because we did, like, some informational interviews before I actually moved up there. But, of course, life doesn't really work how you plan it out in your mind, right? So, it was really a series. Like, at first, I found a steady gig at this advertising place, but then just out of the blue, just it dried up. Like, yeah, thanks, Breon, but they didn't say it, thanks, but you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here, basically.
Was this contract work?
Yeah. So, like, and at that same time, too, I was saving up money to buy my, at the time, girlfriend an engagement ring. And so it's like, okay, I'm paying off that, and just my income's dried up. I'm living in Pacifica. It's not exactly cheap, and I don't have money. What the hell am I going to do? So like there's times I had to like drive Lyft, but then like I got super lucky too, where I got the chance to work at some smaller studios like G and Chung Design with Earl G and Fanny Chung, and Studio Scott with Laura Scott, where they were just like a godsend. Where basically it was kind of like being in grad school, where there's smaller design studios where really just like they didn't have to do this, but like treated me as an equal, letting me be there talking with clients, really learning how to interact with clients. Yeah, and just like the whole process of that from like concept to actually execution, pushing things out.
Yeah.
And I think that really helped me too, to really just kind of like be able to wear different hats, as opposed to like if I was at a bigger place and just doing one little tiny spot, I don't know if I'd be able to adapt like I had to in my career.
Yeah. And now how many years into your career was that about?
Yeah, that was basically, so after I graduated, I was at Live Nation Ticketmaster for about a year, and then I moved up to it. So basically, like within 2 years,
wow,
early on, yeah. And like in the course of that too, I didn't mention is like I got fired from a job. So like that was just like another eye-opening thing where, you know, it's like I just graduated, I'm feeling good about myself, you know, have a job, but it's like, okay, now I have 6-figure student loan debt. I have to tell my girlfriend at the time, not my wife, and then my parents that I just got fired, just feeling like a complete loser. And just I somehow managed not to cry until I got to the lobby. But like looking back, it was one of the best things, just because like that fear was gone. Like I really, from that point on, realized that like nothing, like security is like kind of like an illusion, right?
Yeah.
Like it's there, but like these last few years show you just like things that change in an instant. So like I had that fear gone, and just like that, I guess like it really helped me just to not be afraid to change with things and like adapt. Like even though you may be scared as hell when you're doing it, just doing it. So looking back,
kind of made you fearless a little bit. Yeah. And so the I forget the name of the Gene Chung. That happened after that.
But that happened before. So
that happened before that.
Yeah, sorry, like I'm all over this.
No,
like,
that's okay.
That actually happened after my first gig. So I was there working for a couple months, and there was a really good opportunity too, just like learning from really talented designers.
Yeah.
And I think part of it too is just like working with people, and just, you know, it's like in school, you can't simulate money on the line, right? It's like you're doing for a grade, like, yeah, you have pressure and whatnot, but like money changes things, and clients don't care about reasons for excuses for things.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's awesome. What you said about, well, you said a lot of things that just resonated with me. I think that what you were like, I totally get what you're, so knock wood, I've been fortunate enough not to be fired yet. I don't know, maybe I'll say something today but like I do know that over the course of my career too, like that's something I actually wish I had an experience like that earlier, because it took too long for me to lose that fear of like, oh, what'll happen? I might get fired. Da, 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 da. But like it's a really good trait to have in consulting, I feel like. So but the other thing that you said there was, you know, the Chung agency kind of just treating you as an equal, and that's just so important. That's one of the things I like about here too, is immediately in the door it was just like, you know, there's not that much of a sense of hierarchy. Right. We trust that we hired you to do a good job, and I like to think that it shows in everything that we do. So that's cool. All right, so I think we have like a fair amount of engineers that listen to this, right? And we're trying to change that, and we want to get more designers on here. But so when you're working with engineers, right? Like if there was like one or two things that you really want engineers to know about working with designers, what would it be?
I'd say one, it may not be as true as it was like years ago, is that most of us designers aren't assholes. Like, we can relate to, you know, where it's like a lot of times people could look at dev and engineers like, okay, here, just build it. Like, we don't care. Mm-hmm. A lot of times too, it's like for designers, it's like everyone's clients, like their niece or nephew has Photoshop or whatever design program, and they feel like you could do it, design like my niece or nephew could do it, right? Basically, it's like anyone could do what you do, which is like not the case. Like anybody could play a guitar, a couple of notes, but like everyone can't be Jimi Hendrix, right? Insert whatever guitar legend you love.
Yeah.
So like similarly, just like we understand that kind of like how you could be looked down, and like your role is not being appreciated, basically. I think too, just like really, I see it just like a relationship that goes back and forth, right? Where you look to us for like design insight, but I think we really leverage engineers to really kind of give your perspective, like how can we really not only avoid pitfalls, but really how can we elevate things too, you know, where it's like, I know basic HTML and CSS to like be able to kind of like, it's not such a foreign language, but like I can by no means like really speak to really think about all the situation, even like possibilities within that realm. So really lean on engineers to like help me elevate this too. Because at the end of the day, it's like we all want to have something that we're really proud of that works, and just really just like creating a baby, you know. So.
Right. Yeah, I know. I've the most successful projects that I've been on are the ones where designers are and engineers are in the same room very, very early, because I mean, I'm mostly a back end engineer, right? Like I don't do a lot of front end stuff, and it's funny because sometimes, you know, I've worked with designers that are like, "Oh, well, this seems like this would be hard," and you're like, "No, no, that'll take 2 seconds." And then sometimes it's something that they think will take 2 seconds, and you're like, "Oh no, that's going to take 3 months." So it's best to get that all out in the open. That's cool. Let's change a little bit to what's the funniest thing that you've encountered in your career?
Funniest thing I've encountered. Okay, so like I think one thing, and any designers listening to this, is just like when you get clients that just kind of make the logo bigger, or just like have anxiety caused by like color. I hate working with clients with color just 'cause it's so subjective, and just like, you know, like color is this weird thing where no one. Like, we look at the sky, I see it's blue, but we're not all seeing the same blue, right? So just, like, we think it's the same, but, like, it's so really complex, and just, like, it could be a nightmare just, like, thinking about, like, what shade of blue to make something where I don't really like working with color on that.
That reminds me of, did you watch Fight Club a long time ago? You know, that scene where he's like presenting something and the boss just puts his glasses down. He's like, "Can you make the icon cornflower blue?"
Right.
Yeah. I think, like, I don't know if there's any college students who listen to this, but I've heard other interviewers ask this, and I think it's a good one for an origin story. But what advice would you give any, like, high school or college students who are interested in getting into software design?
Yeah. That's a good question. This might sound weird, but I think like become a better listener. I think that's huge. Where just like in the course of my career, you know, there's websites and stuff we design in Photoshop or Illustrator. You know, Sketch. Now it's Figma. There'll be something else.
Yeah.
But what really matters is like how can you listen to what clients are saying, or even just a lot of times they're trying to say something but not really sure how to say it. I think that's super helpful. And also just like being curious, like having other interests and being able to kind of like be interested in how things connect and kind of like relationships to things.
Yeah.
I think another thing is just like being your own best critic, like being able to like take a step back and sometimes ripping to shreds what you're doing and not really taking it to heart, because that's part of it too, right? Where it's you want to do your good work and you're proud, like you're creating something and you feel like you're creating like your baby of sorts, but sometimes you have to be able to kill your baby, like no pun intended. Just, you know, it's like to really make the best things, it takes being brutally honest and being able to have that really kind of critical eye to detail and things like that. And I think that's definitely something you need to do, and also have thick skin enough to know, like, you know, you're not taking it personally, and being able to kind of really take critiques not personally.
Yeah. What you said about being a better listener, and, you know, like sometimes clients not knowing what they want. Are there any like prompts that you're like techniques that you use to try to suss that out when you feel like you're in that situation?
So we actually had, I won't mention the client, but we had the client was great, but there were some people that are kind of making things not as
great.
Yeah. And so like that was a huge thing, and just like really listening and kind of trying to get into their space of like them not being an asshole just to be an asshole. I felt like maybe they weren't included in what we were doing, and so like we were essentially changing what they had created. But once we were able to like, reframe it. It's like, no, we're on the same side. Like when we're doing good, it helps you too. And so that really changed things.
So assuming good intent, making sure that you're projecting good intents, basically. Yeah.
I think to add too is like, you never know what people are going through. Like if they're bringing a bad day to work. So just like, I guess being open to that. So not necessarily like, definitely not just reacting to whatever happens, like taking the time to really think and kind of reset before you do so.
Nice. Yeah. One of the techniques I've seen used in a meeting, it's not often that it gets used, is like just doing a check-in. You should be like 1 to 5, where are you at today? 1's terrible, 5 is I'm great. And I find it's very effective. Obviously you can't do that all the time, but
I'll use that one sometime in the future.
Yeah, if you have the right kind of hippy-dippy client, I think it's probably it'll probably work. Cool. So, all right, last question, most important question. What's your favorite album that you bring on a desert island?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Because I like a lot of different styles of music, like going from like Jimi Hendrix to jazz to like hip-hop to reggae, like whatever. Like for me, music kind of equates to my mood. But if I have to pick one, I won't say an album, but like Jimi Hendrix just was like a game changer to me, just his music, being black with guitar. I didn't really see that much either. I think I actually first saw Hendrix in Wayne's World.
Really?
Yeah, the coffee shop scene. With,
Foxy Lady.
Yeah, with Garth trying to get attention from that lady in there. So yeah, just like once I heard that just like blew my mind. I asked my mom and dad for a guitar and just...
Oh, you play?
No. Well, I should say I have a guitar. At one point I took lessons and knew some notes, but yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say play. I never really gave it. I need to get back into doing it. So
yeah, that's awesome. He was so. I'm a guitar player. He's so original. Like you never can mistake Jimi Hendrix. It was like 100% pure original. Like just amazing.
Definitely, yeah. Just the short time he did it, and like same thing too for me. It's like Santana, just like I can hear his note and just know it's him instantly.
Yeah, that's true. He's got a tone that's like nothing else. Awesome. Well, this was great, and I didn't say this at the beginning, but I actually don't this is the first time we've met. You just happened to come into the office today. We were opportunistic, so this was actually just such a great, genuine way to meet you. And thanks so much for taking some time.
No, thanks so much, man.
Nice.
That's last.
All right, cool.